everyone. Welcome back to the How to Podcast series. I have an amazing podcast helper. If you want to get your podcast up and going and you want somebody in your corner who can help you and answer the questions and lead you down the path and make you a success that you already are, just accentuate it, make it even more easier for you. Shelia is here on the podcast to talk about what she does for people, and she's got some great advice for you as you start your show. So excited to have Shelia on the podcast. Shelia, welcome to How to Podcast series.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here and to talk about podcasting.
Right. And I'm so excited to have somebody who knows their stuff. Now, how long have you been helping people down the podcast path? How long have you been doing this?
Well, before just the podcast, I have over 25 years of experience in business. I'm a business consultant, and I've been in the software industry since about 2013. And so my passion lies in helping people with the digitization or implementation of tech in their small businesses so that they can, grow up or automate some of the processes. So with that in mind, I started, going on other people's podcasts, love the experience, love podcasts, listening to them. And then I thought, I want my own podcast. So with the same system I had in place, I was able to launch my podcast just recently. It's about 90 days old or 60 days old. I don't think it's 3 months old yet. But I began setting up that proper system, booking my clients, making sure they had a seamless, booking experience so that I just have to show up and start recording. So I think my milestone, it's called Milestone Moments in business and leadership. My milestone moment is I just released my 10th episode, and I have about 12 that are already scheduled, ready to go.
Nice. So you're doing a lot of batch recording then, recording in advance and then filtering them out over a calendar?
Correct. So what I did is I first created, my guest booking page where I invited the guests, because if you don't have guests, you don't have content for a podcast unless you're, doing the podcast on your own. But mine was to share experts, their insights, whether they're coaches or consultants or, they have many years of experience in their field, to share some of their insights, connect with my audience, and inspire them to take action. So with that in mind, I created, my sign-up sheet, and I started inviting the guests, and I automated that process. So as I was receiving the guests, it was almost very efficient. I ended up opening up a second batch of scheduling. So instead of just doing it Thursdays for 4 hours, I now have booked Tuesdays and Thursdays for my podcast episodes. And then I spend the other days just editing, uploading them, and scheduling them.
Okay, so how many podcasters are you working with right now at different stages of getting their podcast up and running? How many are you handling at one time right now?
Well, I helped 3 different people in the past 2 weeks that perhaps just had the illusion, right, or the idea of wanting a podcast and they didn't know where to begin. And I'm all about taking action, taking that first step. So together we've given birth, right, to 3 new podcasts in 2 weeks. After this call, I am helping one more woman do her tech less. Ironically, she's already got her first person booked. And so what we're going to go through now is just taking the resources and creating the account so that she goes through the process of, distributing the podcasts. So this will be my 4th.
Wow, that's great. And then it is rewarding, isn't it, to have somebody come with an idea, want to have a show, and then get to the point where they can see their show on their app of choice. There you are next to all these other great podcasts, and there's my show. Like, I'm actually on the thing. I'm doing it. It's exciting.
Well, so one of the 3 ladies that we started out about 2 weeks ago, when she searched, we had everything up, and she searched and saw, her first episode up. She cried over the phone, just cried in joy. Like it was that moment where she couldn't believe that, she was seeing with her own 2 eyes something that she had in the back of her mind she had been dreaming about, but she just hadn't taken action. She just hadn't implemented. And as a business consultant, I know that, there's a huge difference between having that idea and making it happen. And sometimes you just need someone to either hold your hand or to motivate you and say, do it. So that's where my passion lies. And I get the joy because every time one is born, we're hearing, news stories. You're making someone else's dream come true, right? They wanted a podcast and they wanted it, whether it was to amplify their brand, to share, a message, to create an impact in their community, to help others. Everyone has a reason or a purpose. So when you help them achieve that goal, it's priceless.
Is there anything that you're hearing from people when they come and meet with you in the early days of this conversation where they're struggling with maybe like, who am I to have a show? Or can I really do this? Or do I have the technical ability to make this all happen? Are you hearing kind of some common threads from some of the people you work with? And how do you answer some of those concerns?
Absolutely. Well, the first concern, right? Could I start? Well, I faced that myself, and I'm very comfortable speaking in public. I have facilitated many different cohorts in these 25 years in business. I'm a trained facilitator. I don't have a problem with communication. Yet, releasing that podcast definitely made me step out of my own comfort zone. And but when you do, you feel so good. You feel liberated. Like, you know what? This is me. This is, who I am. This is what I want to share. And you can't please all of the people all of the time. So just remember why you launched it and find that right audience, right? Just be patient with it because there is an audience for everyone. You don't have to please everyone. And I think one of the hardest parts, and not just in podcasting, whenever you want to start a business, is that doubt. Will it be successful? And so what's your worst case scenario, right? You have to at least try. You can't fail if you don't try.
I guess the big thing I hear is people don't want to fail in public. It's one thing to fail in private when no one will know that you tried something and it didn't work. But when you do it on a stage in front of an audience and then you feel like you're failing, it feels like it makes it even worse because now you have all these eyeballs and ears listening and watching your progress. And you're just afraid that somebody's going to say something that's going to make you want to give up or not proceed because people can be kind of cruel sometimes, right? So how do we overcome the fear of people thinking we're not doing it well or good enough to be a podcaster? Is there anything you do to encourage people to get past that fear of disappointing people?
Well, I think that happens with any social media platform out there today. If you're on Instagram, it's visual. It's, oh, your picture's not pretty. You don't have the proper filter. And I think that if you're processing that and you're okay with that one episode that went up, right? Like take the time to listen to it. Don't just blindly, put it up, edit it. And if it sounds good to you, then brush off what other people, think about it. And sometimes the haters may be people that perhaps are just, kind of like looking at you with these green envy eyes because you're doing something that they may want to do, right? So sometimes you have to put in a perspective why you're getting criticized. You also need to reflect and take in this feedback. Just by listening to my own episodes, I'm finding that there's a lot of improvements I want to do. So I'm seeing it as a learning experience. No one is perfect, and we're always looking to learn, right? Looking to perfect those imperfections. And that's in any aspect of your life. So why not apply that to podcasting? I also like to ask for feedback. If you haven't started a podcast and you want to, get out of your comfort zone and try it, my first suggestion would be record two people, invite two people, practice, their interviews with you. That's exactly what I did. The first one, I said, would you mind starting all over? I didn't like how we went. I didn't ask good enough questions or specific questions. So you kind of rambled on and it just kind of didn't go
Yeah.
where I thought it'd go. And she said yes. So that was my first episode. And the second one turned out beautifully. It's one of my most listened to episodes. Why? Because after, having done that first one, that practice one, this person is a good friend, someone that I wanted, to be on the episode. And she understood, she was helping me practice that first one. And so now I'm also helping some of the people that I started with. I said, why don't you practice with me? Whether or not that episode goes in, gets released, let's walk through that process. Let's have that conversation. And then I always tell them, remember that they're recorded. So if you're afraid, don't do it live. Make sure it's recorded, because that really takes away a lot of the pressure, knowing that I said something that I didn't mean to say, and so forth. So there are
Yeah.
different things you can do to feel more comfortable in your own skin. But in the end, everyone has a story, everyone has a message, everyone has unique experiences and skills. So don't let others' criticism keep you away from sharing those, because sometimes it only takes one person to make a positive difference in someone else's life. So that could be you, because that message will resonate with someone else.
Sheila, what do you think about the whole thing about video podcasts versus audio podcasts? I have one woman that I'm working with, and she does not want to be on camera. She wants to remain anonymous. She wants to use a different name because of what she talks about could have an impact on her career and her family. But she's really passionate about this topic. But she doesn't want to be on camera. She's nervous that she has to have a video podcast to be a podcaster. And like we said before we jumped on today, this is just an audio recording. You and I are on camera so we can see each other. But I'm going to be releasing this as an audio version. So I'm kind of leaning her towards that she can do an audio podcast and not have to worry about cameras and lighting and makeup and combing her hair. And you have to worry about all that stuff. You can do an audio version. So what are your thoughts when you talk to people? Are they saying to you, Sheila, I have to have a video podcast because everybody has a video podcast? What are your thoughts?
Well, and I see the trend shifting, right? But to me, the concept of a podcast was all audio. It's kind of like the radio of, the baby boomer generation. And they're used to just listening in and tuning in or radio. If I'm in the car, I'm listening, I'm driving, I am not watching, right?
Yeah.
So that to me is how a podcast and the audience that I'm targeting. So I think that in that, with that in mind, audio is perfect. I think video, well, what's the difference between a podcast and a YouTube channel, right? If we're going to go ahead and do video, what I can tell you is that there are certain platforms that when you distribute the podcast, it turns them to video for you. But instead of sharing this actual video interaction you and I are doing, it just turns it, into like an animated, it's a picture with an animation of a voice, and it still
Yeah.
counts as video. So I would definitely not be held back if someone doesn't want to be on video. I'm not releasing all of my on video, and I'll tell you why. A lot of the guests that I have, I perhaps may edit and clean up a little bit of the audio, whether it be a background noise and so forth. And then that means I also have to edit the actual recording. But I am using the video in with some of my guests because I am putting them up in a platform and then getting like little video clips that are about 10 seconds long that you can then use on social media to promote the actual podcasts. But it's not necessary. And if, for example, someone wants to do it incognito because, maybe it's a provocative or a sensitive issue, or maybe because they're still an employee and this is like their side project or their side gig and they don't want a conflict of interest, with their organization, I would definitely skip the video part and go ahead and do the audio.
Yeah. Because the idea that this particular person feels like they can't talk about a topic that could help many people because they're afraid of technology or they're afraid of how technology will impact their family. I'm sad to hear that they would possibly not podcast just because they feel like they have to do video. And I'm like, you don't have to. So we're kind of working through that, but it's the relief from them saying, so I don't have to be on camera. Like, no. Okay, so I can just do this audio. Yeah. You can see them kind of just take a big sigh of relief. Like, oh, good. So I don't have to do all that. I don't have to buy the camera, the lights and all that stuff. I can just audio podcast. So, yeah.
And not worry about it, because audio does put more pressure on other people as well. When I began my podcast, I needed to do some selfie videos so that I could incorporate that in some of the webinar intros I'm doing. And I just don't feel as comfortable getting that selfie stick out and self-recording. I'm very natural. This conversation we're having, I didn't have to script it. You know, I'm dressed how
Yeah.
I'm dressed. I'm not worried about the lighting. I'm very natural, right? Anything that's going on right now, this is like on raw, it's like raw. But the moment that I picked up that selfie stick to make that intro video, or if you're doing like a tutorial where you would have to show, the steps, then you would have to use video. But I struggle more with the video. And so I thought, wow, having a podcast gives me that space to just have that conversation and record it, the same conversation we'd have off camera, so that we can share those insights with others.
Yeah, I like it. What kind of advice are you giving new podcasters around connecting with their listeners? It's one thing to record an episode, put it onto a player app, and you're done. But there's another side of it where we start interacting with our listeners. How are you directing them to build community? How are you directing them to connect with listeners? Do you have any advice for a new podcaster?
Well, there I'm even going to ask you for some advice, because that's at the stage that I will be getting at next month, right? I kind of developed step 1, step 2, step 3. It's all a process. And in order for it to be seamless, you need to, go through the process, document it, and perfect it to make sure you have kinks out of the way. So my first step was getting it launched, doing that promotion, and making sure, that this all goes smoothly, the booking, the actual meeting, the questions behind it. Because when you have a guest, and so many different guests I've had are thanking me because they said, you asked some really thought-provoking questions. It's really evident you took the time to learn a little bit about me. Well, why else would I want someone on the show? A lot of people are
Right.
doing that. They're just sending perhaps a booking link. And now I'm looking at the booking link like, well, why am I on this person's podcast again? I didn't get enough information. And so all of this is part of the process. And once you have them as a guest, it doesn't end there. Now you need to follow up with them and let them know about their episode, how they can share it with their audiences as well. And then perhaps even schedule a follow-up meeting if you had something in common that allows you to follow up. This is a follow-up meeting. You and I are having a follow-up meeting.
Right.
And so all of those processes need to be in place in order for it to be a seamless experience. Now that you've got all that ready, now you need to think, how am I going to grow the actual audience and bring traffic to the episodes? Well, like any business, the first thing you do is you study your audience. Who am I targeting? Who is this for? And you create a list of people that you think would be interested in this topic, and you start sharing with them. And so I did that. I started sending out a great news. I'm starting this podcast. Who would like to be a guest? Provide your feedback. And I immediately got 6 replies. And I even got another reply this past weekend when I shared it again. Here's my latest episodes. And I'm having these cheerleaders, right? 2 of them were like, Sheila, you made a mistake here, made a mistake here. On the actual email, on the typos. And I said, thank you so much, for letting me know. That shows me you care, because I am getting that feedback.
Good.
I then asked one of the podcast producers that she's also a coach, and, we brainstormed. She was kind of the one that gave me a lot of the knowledge and the, that same push I'm helping others now with. And I said, I need you to tear me up. Like, I feel comfortable enough with you. Give me the bad, the good, and the ugly. And the more you learn, the better off you'll be.
Right.
So your question, because see, now I started rambling, which
See?
your question was, how do we build the community? And
Right.
that is something that I'm looking at. I've had suggestions, start a Slack channel. Currently, because mine is business and leadership, my target is in LinkedIn, and I've got a LinkedIn page, and I'm sending it out to my contacts. So I am getting that feedback, but I don't have a community. So what would you suggest?
So let's go back to what happened just recently. Facebook was down again. And I know a lot of people who have built their community on Facebook. But the frustration that comes to you as a creator of a community when you can't get on the platform where your community lives because of whatever reason, Facebook was not having a good day. Instagram was not having a good day. So all of those people that I know that have put all of their attention on one platform, only that one platform, they were unable to talk to their community in that moment. So they were really frustrated, a little angry that technology had let them down. So for me, what I like to do is I encourage people to have a website that either is tied to your business or tied to your podcast where people can connect and get in touch with you no matter what happens on a social platform. Because you don't own the keys to Facebook. Facebook can shut down any moment or not be live. You have no control over that. But having a website, at least you can control that. And the internet, for the most part, stays up all the time. So I encourage people to have a website, some way to get in touch with you outside of social media as a complementary way of reaching you. For me, because my podcast is around podcasting, what I do is I host meetups on meetup.com where I bring in people that listen to the show and people who have sweet clue who I am. They have no idea that I have 8 podcasts and I've been doing this for many years and I have thousands and thousands of episodes. I'm just some guy named Dave that they've never met before, which is awesome because that's who I want to be in front of. I want to be in front of people who do not know who I am. That makes me excited and happy because that's a new listener possibly for my show. So hosting a meetup, I get to be on camera with listeners. I get to answer questions, be in their world. So that's one way that I'm doing it, and it's really going well. I'm really having a lot of fun with that. The other one, if you are on social media, Instagram, for example, is when somebody follows my Instagram account, I try to do something uniquely different. I jump into their DMs, and I'm like, hey, Shelia, thank you for following here on Instagram. And I leave a voice message. I don't type a message. I leave a voice message because now you got to press play. You're like, what is this? Why am I getting a voice message? Who is this guy? So then I can talk to them. It's not something I can do through a VA. It's not something I can offload to someone else to do on my behalf. I have to do it myself. It takes a few minutes, but it's that interaction that, Shelia, I know, I recognize you. You're here. Thank you. And you get a message from me directly. So I'm really all about making it as easy as possible for people to connect with me or for me to connect with them. And the other thing on my website, I have a SpeakPipe link at speakpipe.com. It's free to set up. You can get a link to put on your website. People can leave you a voice message. So now I can hear the voice of my listener, not just a typed message. And I bring the message into my podcast. So you leave me a message. I'm like, hey, everyone, Shelia left me a message over on my website. Here's Sheila's message. I press play. And there you are on my show. So now the voice of my listener, who may never have a podcast, but they get to hear themselves on my show, they're going to tell everyone. I was on Sheila's podcast. I left her a message, and then all of a sudden, Shelia says, hey, everyone, Dave's here with a message for the show. And I'm like, I'm telling everyone, I'm on Sheila's podcast. It's great. So that's the kind of stuff I like to do, is create an atmosphere where there's a give and take between my audience. What are your thoughts?
I love it. I want you to repeat the name of the voice. I'm going to write it down.
Yeah. So it's SpeakPipe. SpeakPipe.
Oh, perfect.
.com. Yeah, SpeakPipe. So you can get a free SpeakPipe plan, and I think it's like 90 seconds limit per message, but then you can go with a paid plan. And for me, I get like up to 5 minutes of recording time for each message. It comes into me as an email, and I can respond from the email, or I can download the message, and then it's mine to drop into my episode.
Well, I really agree with you when you said connect with them outside of social media. And as a business consultant, this goes beyond podcasting. And over and over and over, we see sometimes it's not just a blackout like occurred where people were, freaking out. My business relies on this platform, or what if they ban TikTok? It's really, going to take my business down. And so what happens with a lot of these social media platforms is they keep those followers, those users within the account. So when that happens, you can't communicate with them off the platform. If you have a Facebook group, unless when they're joining the group, you're collecting their emails, right? You can't communicate with them outside of that group. And what happens when the account gets hacked? It's way beyond a blackout. Try and get a hold of some of these social media platforms and try and get a human on that phone explaining to them the urgency that you have just lost access to your admin account. And now you've got indecent stuff getting published on your page. And you just received an email saying, you've been removed as an admin. Where do I go now? And I see this
Wow.
so often outside of podcasting with business in
Yeah.
general, that you always need to have that direct communication with them. So no matter what platform you build that community in, you need that backup. You need a way to be able to email them or text them and say, hey guys, I'm available in this other platform. And the website is something that belongs to you. And when I say belongs to you, I mean, you're hosting it on someone else's server, but it's like a car. You can park in a different garage. You're not able to do that with the social media. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to bring all my followers from Facebook and, bring them into X, or Twitter.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they become not obsolete, but, that new app comes out and everyone's now trying out that new app. You have spent a lot of time and money building your audience on someone else's platform. So try and that's why my first community is spanning out of my own contacts and my email list and getting them to join that so that I can be communicating, whether it's a meetup, a new episode. And my next one's going to say, hey, leave me a message on SpeakPipe. Or no, on
Yeah.
my website, I'm going to use SpeakPipe.com.
Very good. So let me know when that's ready. Send me the link so I can leave you a message.
You'll be my first.
So then, yeah, I want to leave you a message. I love it. I love it. So the one thing I get too is I get questions about starting a podcast. And one of the things I ask everyone is, okay, is this just for fun? Is this like, you just want to play with podcasting and you have no dreams of ever making any significant money with this? It's just for fun. Like for me, I play guitar. I have 9 guitars. I've got thousands of dollars in guitars, but I don't play out live anymore. I'm not doing concerts. No one's paying me to play my guitar. It's just fun. It's my hobby, and I'm okay with that. And I love playing the guitar. So I don't go to the store, buy a guitar, walk out the door and go, hey, Sheila, I just bought this guitar. Can I have some money? I'll play it. You give me some money. Well, I thought this was a hobby for you. Like, right? So I like to ask everyone that's starting a show, do you envision this podcast ever becoming a part of your business or becoming a business? Then you need to treat it like a business from the beginning. Don't start it as a hobby and say, I'll never monetize. I'll never have sponsors. I'll never sell a product. And then all of a sudden try to change from a hobby to a business. That's a hard thing to do. So if your intention is to eventually treat this podcast as a business, then from the beginning, treat it like a business. Like work with somebody like you who can help you understand the business side of podcasting and creating a business online. So I'd love to get your feedback on that. If I'm going to be a hobbyist and I'm never going to make money, is it okay to have a podcast? And if I'm a business person, what's different? What should I think about at the beginning stages?
Well, two things. One, whenever you want to start a business and you have that idea, you need a business plan. And there are different formats of business plans. If you're not looking to be a startup that's looking for that Series A funding, or you're not going to need a loan, you don't need a 30-page business plan. You can do a Canva business plan, which is, it's a one sheet. But what they all do is they make you go around all of the different elements you need to take in a consideration to validate the idea. And that involves, research, a little bit of research, asking who you think your target audience is or feedback, and then, making those changes before you launch it. It also involves thinking of the financial considerations. Well, if I'm looking to generate, turn this into a business, I'm going to need an audience, and I'm going to have to actually not just, invest my time and maybe, the studio equipment. I'm going to have to invest in advertising or marketing or events. How am I going to get that word out there? Because now you need to make sure it's producing money. So I absolutely love the idea of, if you're thinking, I'm going to monetize this, take the time to at least, go through that business plan so that you are able to validate the idea and make sure it's viable. If you want to start it as a hobby, that's great too. And I don't know that there's such a black and white line, though, because it can always evolve into something more. And
Yeah.
I'll give you a perfect example. About 2 weeks ago, I ended up meeting through podcasting a colleague. He earned 2 master's degrees from the same university I earned a master's degree from. So it was just really neat that we were, meeting through podcasting, even though we would have never met. We graduated a decade apart. I was fascinated, and both in the same degree. And I said, so how did you start your business? Because that's one of the questions that I had. He said, at the time, I was actually working under an aviation, company. I had been an employee for about 8 years. I knew nothing about leadership, and I wanted to learn. So he just began sharing and inviting guests, sharing what he was learning. That was 4 years ago. And then he realized that he had a lot of young people that weren't in aviation listening in. So he spun off and he created a second podcast, one for the young professionals and one for the aviation, where he digs deeper just in the aviation. And that turned into a company, and it's a partnership, and they offer corporate training programs in aviation. So all of that was born because while he was an employee, he just wanted to share what he was learning, and it turned into a viable business. So don't be so black and white.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It could happen that you started
Could
off
happen.
as a hobby and then opportunities arise and you have that aha moment. The moment that you consider, okay, how am I going to turn this into a hobby? That's when you need to sit down and start with that same business plan that you would from the outset.
I love it. And one thing we talked about before we hit record is you also leverage automations to help people with their podcast, getting started and maintaining it. Can you talk about that? Because I haven't had a lot of people on here talking about that. What type of automations are you talking about? And how do we even how do we even learn about these things? Can you talk about that?
Well, so as a business owner, and this is particularly for either solopreneurs or smaller business, business teams or coaches and consultants that maybe have one VA, two VA, this is the perfect software. It's a business management software platform. So about 2 years ago, I revised my own business plan for the company. I wanted to learn automation. And I began by automating a few of my financial tasks. So at the end of the year, when it comes time to run my reports, and I thought, oh my gosh, compared to last year, and I did the math, and I saved a significant number of hours simply by integrating some automations. So last year came around, I thought, What I don't have is a CRM because I don't plan to be a huge empire. And I have all of my emails organized. I've got, I use different softwares to either keep a track of the pipeline or the project stages. I use email, but I was all over the place using various systems. So I spent about 2 weeks researching all of these free trials, and I found the perfect fit for me, which is Keap, also known as Infusionsoft. Once I set Keap up, it does a lot more than just the podcast automations because there I am able to create landing pages, which are individual website pages. I'm able to include forms, which is exactly what I did with my podcast. I created a page just for the sign up. And the moment the person enters there, they enter into an automated sequence of events that takes place to make sure they're getting the reminders, they're getting the emails. You forgot to submit the form. Please, submit the form so that I have all of their information. It keeps track of the calendar and the booking. So I'm not having to go into my calendar saying, hey, when's a good time for you to meet? This is all happening.
Yeah.
When they complete one step, they go to the next. And then when the actual podcast comes up, just like some calendar software, they'll receive reminders via their phone or their emails that they've got the podcast episode. And that really helps with no-shows. I haven't had a single no-show, thank God, because it's your time.
Yeah.
And then once that happens, we now go into the templates that we create for the post show, right? And how are we going to communicate with them afterwards? So by having a system like Infusionsoft or Keap in place, you're able to create the different elements, the different emails, the different pages that you need, and then integrate within the same program the automations. So I became a certified partner last year because when you pick one of these softwares, whether it's Keap or whichever platform works for your business, there are different things that you need to consider to see, is this like the right foundation for my business? You don't want to be moving. It's like packing up and moving an apartment 6 months later
Yeah.
because you wanted to either save a few cents or you wanted to start for free. So if you're ready, take the time to make sure it's, the platform that's going to work for you a year down the road. So I became certified, and now I am able to take the very same system that I did for me and then pass it on to someone that signs up for Keap using my partner link. I'm also able to offer them a partner, even if they don't work with me, right? I'm able to pass on a savings because with these platforms, what they are is a bit complex and complicated for anyone, no matter which platform you use. So if you have someone that knows how to use the platform, that'll walk you through it and hold your hand, in 1 hour, 2 hours, you can walk them through. Here's where you need to click. Let's set your account up. You also get a business line. Let's set up that business phone line. Let's set up your domain. Then you can breeze through it without breaking your own head. And that's how I was able to help these other people just go from idea to launch the podcast within 30 days. A lot less than 30 days, but I'm saying 30 days.
I love it. Well, okay, I know your calendar is packed, Sheila. So I want to end off here, but for those people that are interested in Keap, they have more questions, they want to work with you, and they want to have you walk them through the steps of learning this platform and just get in your world. And if you can tell us how to get in touch with you, would love to do that. And then maybe any closing thoughts for a new podcaster who's listening to this going, A, I really like Sheila, which I really like Sheila, or B, I'm here to get inspired to start my show. Whatever you can do to close that off. But how do we get in touch with you, and how do we inspire that new podcaster as we close off?
So my website is five, like the number five, FIVE, milestones.com. 5 milestones, plural.com. So if you visit my website, you can look at the Keap. You can learn about Keap and see a podcast package. You can also request a free consult by scheduling a consultation. I'd be happy to talk to you for 15, 20 minutes, just see where you're at and maybe give you some nuggets to motivate you to start. If you already have a podcast and you're just sharing a link to book clients, or if you're scheduling like using Excel and you'd like to explore getting a system that'll work way beyond the podcast for you, feel free to reach out as well. FiveMilestones.com. And I invite all of your listeners to tune in to my podcast called Milestone Moments in Business and Leadership. And if you want to be a guest on my show, visit my website and click the podcast tab, and you'll see the button there to be a guest.
Perfect. And for a new podcaster, what's your closing thought? How can we encourage them to chase their dream and do their podcast?
Just do it.
Just do it.
Out of your head that you can't. At least try it, because I can tell you that once you try it, it becomes a bit addicting. You're going to be thinking, what's my next podcast going to be about? I started it. Now I want like more podcasts. It's just a lot of fun. It builds relationships way beyond any social media. You're going to get to meet other people that share, some of common interest, right? And you never know where the relationships will take you. And it may open up new opportunities that aren't even in your head right now. Yeah. So, step out of that comfort zone and start doing your podcast today.
I love it. So for those listening, thank you for being here to the end. Just to give you a sense of who Shelia is, I had a meeting before my meeting here with Shelia today. My guest went really long, put stress on Shelia. She's waiting for me to show up for today. Sheila's very patient, very kind. She's a great person to work with, great person to talk to. I can vouch for that because I made her wait today, and she's so gracious to allow me to do that. So Sheila, thank you for that. And thank you for taking time to be on my show. So excited to have you here. And I can't wait for new people to come find you because of our conversation. So again, thank you for making time for all of us.
Well, thank you. And if anyone has a question they'd like me to answer on the show, have them visit your website and leave me a voice message, and I'd love to come back.
Oh, great. And you're going to leave me your link so I can leave you a voice message. I can't wait to be one of your first SpeakPipe messages.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Awesome, everyone. All the information for Sheila is in the show notes, as always. And if you're looking for an amazing person who can help you with your podcast, I am telling you, you got to go talk to Sheila. She's amazing. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you for sticking all the way through to the very end. It's bittersweet that the episode is over and that we're done for this episode, but you will come back and I will come back, and there's you and me, and we're one big happy family here at the How to Podcast series, far beyond being just pod pals, which is fine, but I'd much rather do life together as family here. And to that end, a reminder, as we talked earlier in other episodes as well, that we do have a meetup group and you are invited. I would love to have you come. It's free. We do them scattered throughout our calendar, different days, different times, because we have people listening around the world, like Cuba and Warsaw, Poland. Hi, Cuba. It's amazing how we can reach the world with a podcast. So through our meetup group, what we do is we get together. It's free for you. Cost me money, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. We get together, we meet other podcasters, we talk podcasting, and it's a way to get from behind the microphone, sitting by ourselves, recording on our own, and doing community. Podcasters need community. You need to meet other podcasters. And just in a low-key, fun environment, talk podcasting. So my challenge to you in 2024 and beyond is to get into a meetup group, find other podcasters, introduce yourself and make new friends, It's just like school all over again, grade 9. Let's meet each other and share the podcast journey. Go to howtopodcast.ca and click on all the information you'll find there around our meetups. And I'd love to have you there. Thanks for listening. Catch you on the next episode. Get out there and record your podcast. Take care.